Welcome back, everybody, to the Friendly Circle Berlin Monday Workshop. My name is Patrick, and it's my great pleasure today to welcome back with us Dr. Fred Luskin. And in this workshop, Fred will share key insights from decades of research on forgiveness and recovery, offering practical, down-to-earth tools for self-forgiveness and emotional healing. Together, we'll explore what forgiveness really is and what it isn't, while practicing simple, accessible exercises that can help loosen the grip of old hurts and open the way to freedom. This is drawing from the Forgive for Good Recovery Workbook. Fred offers in this new book a compassionate step-by-step approach to moving beyond resentment, making peace with the past, and finding greater ease in the present moment. Fred is over 30 years helping people to learn to forgive, heal, and live more fully. As director of the Stanford University Forgiveness Project, he has taught thousands, from people in recovery groups to survivors of violence, how to let go of long-held pain. His work blends solid research with a deep belief that forgiveness is a skill anyone can learn, offering practical, heart-centered tools people can use in everyday life. Fred, you're doing great work, and we're so happy that you're with us today. I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Hello, everyone. That was a nice introduction. I have been teaching forgiveness a long time. I started teaching forgiveness because I couldn't do it, and I annoyed the hell out of everybody in my life because I was such a bitter pain in the ass. Being a bitter pain in the ass is not the best way to go through life. It didn't work that well for me, but it does appear that the world keeps on producing bitter pains in the ass because there's no end to people who need to learn how to forgive. It's one of the sobering things about being in this kind of business for 30 years. You never run out of angry people. It's the weirdest. I mean, it is kind of weird being older and just watching the world create the exact same problems over and over and over again, as if the information to help has not always been out there. It's the weirdest thing. Anyway, I'm kind of out talking again to folks because we recently published a workbook on forgiveness, and the publishing company wanted it to be oriented to people in recovery. Forgiveness is the same whether you're forgiving someone else or yourself or God or whatever it is that you've created a resentment against. The same thing is, it doesn't really matter what the content is. You know, some people may have to forgive drinking too much. Some people may have to forgive lying. Some people may have to forgive failing or not taking care of business, whatever. But the publishing company said, we want a book for the recovery space. So we wrote a book for the recovery space, even though I'm going to tell you the forgiveness is 98% the same. And that's the good news, which is no matter what your supposed issue is, we're all first and foremost human beings with like 99.9% the same DNA. And the interesting thing is that one of the things that makes it really hard for people to forgive is they think that the shit they have to forgive is unique. Like, I'm going to say, in my career, one of the biggest obstacles people have shown to forgiveness is this mistaken idea that what I have to deal with is somehow unique or precious or different or wonderful or special when it's just normal human suffering. And many, 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 many people impair their recovery, so to speak, because they idolize their suffering. You know, I had crappy parents. They make that like, I don't know, like Moses coming down with the tablets, you know, they make it like into this big, 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 big deal when often, if not usually, that's one of their obstacles to growth. Like instead of just saying my suffering is the human suffering in a different form. So maybe I abuse substances, or maybe I put up with somebody who abused substances. That's my bad. But the guy down the block, he didn't abuse substances. He worked all the time. And the guy down the block from him, he didn't work all the time, but he couldn't love. Like whatever, his childhood, his DNA, his nervous system, he just couldn't love. So his kids grew up in a cold home. What difference does it make what the drama line is of your deal? What matters is, and you all know this better than me from 12-step programs, what matters is being straight with yourself and not throwing the normal bullshit around, which we always throw around. Look at how unique and special I am, and look at how pretty my little pile of crap is. But that's what stops us from the compassionate humility it takes to forgive. It takes a deeply compassionate humility to say, I screwed up. But the next step is enjoying the human race. You screwed up. We all screwed up. All of us. The question is not, did I screw up? But what flavor was my screw up? That's all. What flavor of it? Some people have vanilla screw up, other people have chocolate screw up. You got a few people with butter pecan screw up, but you got screw up. But the compassion is, one, I screwed up. Two, that's pretty damn normal. Now, what do I do? If I make my screw up more important than everybody else's screw up, I lack compassion. That conceit also keeps us from joining the human race. Like my suffering's more important than yours. Or religious people sometimes say, my God's bigger than your God. But that need to be special is one of our biggest obstacles to healing. One of the few things that we can do if we need to be special, unfortunately, is to be humble and acknowledge I'm not so special. I'm a normal human with a limited lifespan who doesn't understand this life as much as I would like to, who has made mistakes during this life, who needs to ask for absolution for their mistakes, who needs to try to make their mistakes right, and who needs to offer to others and themselves mercy. You know, I remember I was reading a little bit about, the last pope, and I'm not Catholic, has nothing to do with that. And his emphasis on mercy. And I've been thinking about that in terms of, forgiveness is a derivative of mercy. It's a giving of kindness to people who are flawed and may have failed, either ourselves or others. And if you look around, what's really shocking is how much failure there is in the human experience. The biggest honest humility is we don't know enough. That is the toughest, most honest humility. We simply don't know enough. Our brains cannot handle enough data and information and goodwill to figure it all out. And so, of course, we make mistakes. And of course, people make mistakes. The question is, what do we do with those mistakes? My forgiveness work has been research validated. I mean, we've done studies. The handful of studies we did on people who are in recovery, testing out this work, the handful of studies that we did to really try to validate this was that people in recovery tend to have more issues with self-forgiveness than people not in recovery. That was one research finding. People in recovery tend to be harder on themselves than people not in recovery. That's an analogous finding. Once you get past that, it's not that different. Our method, we've done a couple of groups which we have researched, show that if you follow what we teach, you become a little more likely to want to forgive yourself. You become a little more likely to stick to your recovery. You become a little more hopeful. I know enough. I mean, I've never had an addiction problem besides an addiction to my own voice. And that's a big addiction, let me tell you. I mean, I'm a teacher who can't shut up, and that is an addiction. I have to hear myself talk. I apologize. You'll laugh at this because it's true and not true at the same time. But my stepdaughter is sick. I mean, she lives an hour away at college, and I was giving her some unasked for parental advice. I've never heard her ask for parental advice, so you have to start from there. So all my advice is unasked for. It's not unwanted, but it's unasked for. And I'm texting her this advice, and at the end of the text, I said, sorry that you get free of charge, unwanted surrogate parenting. You just get it free of charge. You don't have to ask, you don't have to show up, you don't have to do anything. That's my addiction. And it is a form of addiction. It's a compulsive habit. It's a compulsion that I can't easily regulate, even if people are praying in front of me to shut up. People have brought Lord's holy water and sprinkled it on me to shut me up, and it doesn't work. So we all have behaviors, all of us, that we don't control. All of us. Some do more harm than others. But to think that there's someone out there that's not addicted to something is nuts. That said, when we have an addiction, we're responsible for its consequences. So just because I talk too much doesn't mean I'm not responsible for people showing up to listen to me with noise canceling headphones. That's like smart on their part, especially when it's my own kids. They come to dinner with the headphones on because dad can't shut up, but at least we'll put headphones on. If you had an addiction problem and your kids won't talk to you, or you blew up your marriage, or you blew up your job, that's entirely on you. It doesn't matter that we call it an addiction. We're still 100% responsible for what we do. That's why forgiveness is so important. Because, and also knowing enough about like recovery, the first line of our book on the Forgive for Good workbook for recovery, I don't know where it was taken from, but it's straight out of the recovery literature on resentment is the number one driver of relapse. So we're not dealing with nothingness here. We're dealing with serious issues of human behavior, absolution, and recovery. Normal human behavior, absolution, and recovery. So for us as forgiveness teachers, and again, the book we wrote is simply a workbook on the methods that I will outline to you. It's a step-by-step thing. It's just whatever. But the first step always in any kind of healing is acknowledge you did something. Now that sounds so ridiculously simple and stupid. And at some level, it is ridiculously simple and stupid. But it's the most important piece. If you want to forgive yourself for whatever you did overtly and whatever you didn't do covertly. So when we're forgiving ourselves, it's both for what we did. Maybe we did harm. Maybe we lost our temper too often. Or maybe we showed up impaired. Those are dids. But maybe we also didn't do. Maybe we didn't love enough. Or maybe we didn't say the right words when they were needed because we were dealing with ourselves. So there's commission and omission. Or maybe we didn't fully appreciate the people in our lives who tried to help us. That's a huge area that we need, both self-forgiveness and amends. There were always people who had their hand out to us saying, hey, I see you, I care for you, you need to grow up or change, and I'm here. And we very often swatted them away. There's all sorts of things, but the first step is always honesty. And you know this again more than me from the 12-step programs. You have to admit the truth. Well, from somebody who's been a psychologist and a therapist for 30 years, Please don't take that step lightly. That is the hardest thing for an ego to do, is to be honest. Your ego and my ego spends its entire existence trying to protect us, trying to minimize what we have done and maximize our benefit. That is what the ego does. It is willing to lie, to cheat, to steal. It's ruthless in its desire to keep us from seeing ourselves clearly. And I'm going to say something provocative around self-forgiveness. I have found that both with people in recovery and normal folks who are just recovering from themselves, we tend to have had too much self-forgiveness through our lives, not too little. If we really saw the way we behaved and acknowledged it, we would have stopped our behavior long ago. Please understand that. We mostly are guilty of too much self-forgiveness. Otherwise, we would have stopped. If we knew how many times we disappointed our children or our partners or our parents or ourselves, if we had been honest along the trip and not made excuses for ourselves, we would have stopped. But that ego, that sense of us being the center of the universe, it'll do anything to protect us from seeing ourselves clearly. So the first step is literally, what did I do? Not excuses, not why did I do it? Who cares why you did it? Like when you're apologizing to something, who cares? I mean, I'm not saying who cares in a nasty way, but what difference does it make why you did it? You did it. It may matter to you why you did it, but if you're asking somebody to forgive you, why would they care why you did it? But the first step, and this is, I mean this is challenging, is what did I honestly do? What did it look like? What did it sound like? What happened when I did it? What happened when I didn't do what I should have done? What happened when I came home drunk and my kid wanted to be taken to the baseball game? What happened? What did their face look like? Forgiveness is tough. You have to be strong to look at yourself honestly. It's not a get out of jail card. It's deep healing. But it's not a free pass. It's not, go, collect $200 and then go back around, that ain't the game. It's what did I do? What didn't I do? What did I do? What didn't I do? And then honesty, and it's painful. It doesn't mean you have to live in that pain, but if we're going to do self-forgiveness, we need to start with that honesty. And we need to feel the pain of harming this universe, of harming this world, of letting ourselves down, of letting other people down. And the best way to look at this is we made a mess. The way I see it is that all of us have made messes in life, all of us. The question is, do you own the mess? Do you clean it up? It's like you spill something in your kitchen. That could be your lies. You spill something out of the refrigerator. That could be your hiding the truth of your addiction. Those are your messes. You need to clean them up. You can't clean up a mess until you acknowledge it's there. And you can't lie about it. No, the milk fell out of the refrigerator without me going near it. I was walking by, the milk heard me and fell. You have to say, I opened the refrigerator and maybe I wasn't noticing. And the milk fell. It's not a crime, but the milk fell. So the first step is acknowledge your mess. I made it. It's not the only mess in the world. There'll be a million zillion more, but I made this one. And then the quality that is hard, the essential quality of forgiveness, is to feel your suffering because of the suffering you caused. To feel it. Not hide from it, not take a drink because of it. Feel it. Own it. Yeah, of course this hurts. I made a mess. I made a mess. Like, I'm a normal human being who made a mess. But when you allow yourself to feel it and not run from it, but also not exaggerate it, feeling it doesn't mean that you become Darth Vader. You know, it's not like you're the worst person on the planet. You're just feeling what you did. You know, yeah, I lied or I cheated. You know what I mean? That's that. Who doesn't? The basic thing that this does, honest God, is when you feel your pain without hiding, without making excuses, and without bullshitting, and you allow it to go for a while, what you end up with is remorse. And remorse is an incredibly helpful program. Remorse. I feel bad for the harm that I did, or I feel bad for the years that I wasted in drugs. Remorse. Nobody forced me. It's not like I did it because I wasn't loved as a kid. You might not have been loved as a kid, but that has nothing to do with why you ended up using substances. It may be very true that you weren't loved as a kid. That needs to be dealt with. But the first and most important piece is, my bad. I'm there. I see it. And I now feel bad. I have remorse. And you've all learned that there's like shame, which is not helpful for long, which is I'm a bad person. It is perfectly useful to have some, I'm going to say, guilt because I did bad things. Shame doesn't help anybody. Guilt is very useful. Guilt is I did bad things. Shame is I'm a bad person. Nobody's essentially a bad person, but a lot of us have done bad things. So remorse is first. I feel bad. I screwed up. That's the key. That's the empathy and the compassion and the concern for the impact of our behavior. Those are positive things. They're wonderful things. The more you can care about the harm and the impact that you've done on this world and the other people, the better a human being you are. Like, that's what's so missing sometimes in our real therapeutic world, as if feeling bad about what you've done is a bad thing. It's essential for your humanity. Only a real human being suffers because they have made others suffer. That's a sign of grace. Now, you don't want to stay that way for 10 years, but you got to go through it. You have to go through it. So you have real remorse. And then, as the 12-step programs make really clear, after remorse comes, well, what do I do? Okay, I feel bad. Now what? Well, they make it abundantly clear. You make amends where you can. You apologize wherever you can. And you stop doing what it is that you didn't do right. And that's where the self-forgiveness rubber hits the road. So in terms of remorse, which is different than shame, shame usually makes people defensive, and it's not that sincere. Remorse is, I did bad, and I need to make it right. Well, that's a wonderful quality. And you can tell remorse from shame, which is if you feel remorseful and you tell somebody, well, you know, when I told you I was out there, I was actually cheating on you. If you feel remorse and they say you're terrible, well, then you're going to say, yeah, I did behave terribly. If you feel shameful, you may fight them. Well, it wasn't that bad. You can tell real remorse by when you share what you did with other people, you're not defensive. Real remorse is not defensive, right? Real remorse is, wow, I feel bad. I did bad. So the key ingredient is an honest appraisal that I failed life in some way. That's the key ingredient. Not that I'm a bad person, but that in some way I failed life. And I may have failed life by not taking care of myself, by not taking care of others, by not honoring this beautiful body, by abusing substances when this gorgeous world was available to me. There's a lot of ways we can have failed life. And remorse is our acknowledgement that I failed life, and in whatever way I can, I need to make it back up to life. Not necessarily to the individual, but to life itself. I need to make it back up. So the first step to making it back up is apology. That's the first. I'm sorry. And what's so interesting about apology is you can see by how well you apologize how sincere your remorse is. That's the test. Real remorse goes, I am so sorry that I let you down. I am so sorry that I was wasted for those 5 years and you had to be a single parent. I am so, so sorry that my behavior harmed you. I can't tell you how bad I feel about that. That's what remorse is. I feel bad because my actions, my words, my speech, my whatever made your life harder. Sometimes it's just to the universe, I'm so sorry that I was blotto enough that I couldn't have appreciated the beautiful world you gave me a chance to inhabit. Like I was given this gift of life and I wasted parts of it. And that's a tremendous remorse. And you can apologize to the universe. You can apologize to whatever your God is. You can apologize to anybody that you let down. Apology is not a criminal indictment. It's a sincere understanding that my mess harmed other people besides just me. And I want to apologize because I need to clean up my mess. That's the place that we miss. I want to apologize. It's important for me. I made a mess. It hurts to see my mess. I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to who, because of substances or addiction to gambling or sex or whatever, addiction to money, were terrible parents. And then they're pissed off at their kids because their kids who had a parent themselves don't want them back. The kids said, hey, you abandoned me. I don't know that I want you back. And I dealt with so many people who were angry about that. And I thought, well, if you have real remorse, you understand that actions have consequences. And back in the 1980s, there was a TV show in the United States called Beretta, where there was that famous, don't do the crime if you don't want to do the time. That was the don't do the crime if you don't want to do the time. And that's the truth of life. Don't do the crime if you don't want to do the time. So the first step is remorse. The second step is apology. And apology needs to go like this. My bad. Not the worst the world's ever seen. I'm not a criminal. Don't deserve to be electrocuted. Just my bad. My bad harmed you. My bad harmed you. For that, I am deeply sorry. I'm not making excuses. I'm not telling you that I intended 14 other things. Right? I'm sorry that my bad hurt you. That's what a sincere apology is. The sincere apology makes a link between my action and the harm done to you. A fake apology is, I'm sorry you feel bad. That's a complete bullshit apology. I'm sorry you're hurt is a bullshit apology. Meaningless. The only sincere apology is, I did X. It harmed you. I am owning that link, and I'm sorry for what I did and how it harmed you. And a full apology includes what you might do to either make it right or have it never happen again. So the easiest of an apology is, hey, I know I've been late a lot. My life's been a mess. Just a normal apology. My life's been a mess. I've been late. I've not been dependable. I'm sorry. I know how much of a problem that has caused for you. My being late has made everything you do harder. That's a legitimate apology. I'm sorry. I'm entering therapy to find out why I keep on doing this. That's a full apology. Or next time I'm late, I'll do X to make it up. Next time, whether it's if I caused you to do this, if I caused you to miss work, I'll give you $50. It doesn't matter what it is. I'll make you dinner. But a sincere apology, the reason apology works is that it's about the other, not about you. It's about the harm I did to the world or others that I need to own and clean up. So I'm sorry. It's my bad. I harmed you. Now here's what I can do. The 12-step programs also acknowledge that sometimes there's a serious need for making amends. Make it right. I think that is a really important step. When you hear what our definition of self-forgiveness is, you'll understand why. And you'll also understand why so much of this came from, I spent a year working in a VA hospital where I was part of recovery groups that were heavily influenced by 12-step programs. So it's not that I've ever been a part of anything, but I spent much of a year as an intern therapist in them. Is understand what an amends does. It's your way of cleaning up your mess. That's what it is. It's your way. And it's a lovely thing. Now, sometimes you can't make an amends. So I've had numerous situations where, again, people have said to me, I really screwed up as a parent. I was either working all the time, or I was preoccupied, or I was drunk. I mean, there's a million reasons. I was a crappy parent, or I was too young, or I was too stupid. I became a parent at 19. I couldn't tie my own shoes. It's like, of course I was a crappy parent. But what I have told them, and this is the amends piece, I've said to them, well, maybe you can't do anything to make your kids feel better, but you can still clean up your mess. You can go down to a local middle school and help some kid with algebra and dedicate it to your kid that you weren't there for. Or go to the dog pound and walk a dog and say, I didn't have time to take care of things when it was my turn. But now I have all the time in the world. So now I can do it. That's what making amends is, folks. It's not just that it's tit for tat. It's that you owe the universe a debt. Because you can make amends, so to speak, when the people you harmed are dead or never want to speak to you again. You can pay back the universe. You can return what you took. You can give anytime, anywhere in life. Anytime. You can always give. And you can use that giving as an acknowledgement that there were times in my life when I didn't give enough, or I took too much, or I wasn't conscious enough to give. Now I'm making it right. The amends do not have to be situation specific. They can be general, but you own it in your heart. You know, again, with these stepchildren that I have, you know, they're only partly my kids, you know, and they have their own father. So I have to tread gently and appropriately with them. I have to be very careful with them. I'm not perfect. I have apologized, you know, for mistakes. That's human. I hope you grasp the essential humanity that's in this process of forgiveness, this deep, essential humanity of human beings who fail and human beings who make it right. And it's an endless process of being a human being. And again, it rests on being able to be honest with when you've screwed up. It rests with self-honesty. That's its core. The other piece of it is to be a full human and to fully forgive yourself. You have to acknowledge your wins also, and I'll get to that shortly. Right now, we're just dealing with your messes, but the messes are not the full picture. The messes are only a piece of the picture. So here's the key thing. When you've been honest about what you've done, the 12-step programs are brilliant in the fact that they tell you you need to share it. And I say that too. Before anybody fully deserves self-forgiveness, you have to share the harm you did. You have to tell a couple people that you have to make your humanity known. It's also good for the soul to admit you're a screw up. It also puts you in the human race. Because, you know, like Jesus said, let he who was what? Without sin, cast the first stone. There ain't none of us out there without sin. None of us. But the key piece is I screwed up. I've told a couple people, 12-step is fine. You don't have to tell somebody directly, but you need to tell some folks. And you need to be honest when you tell those folks, not just I was a bad parent, but I did X, Y, and Z. Now, you don't have to spend 4 days cataloging everything you did wrong, like November 12th, 2004, I didn't come home. November 6th, 2006. You don't have to get that granular. But in order to deserve full self-forgiveness, you need to publicly acknowledge what you did, who it harmed, and that you feel bad. That you understand you let yourself and the universe down. And now, once you've apologized, made amends, and done what you can to not do it again, the good news is you're free. That's the good news of real self-forgiveness. It's like you've served your prison sentence. Like if somebody does a crime and they do the time, they're done. They don't have to apologize to anyone. Using that metaphor, if you do your crime and you do your time, the deal's over. You've cleaned up your mess. You don't have to feel bad in front of people. I did what I did. I paid the price. Karma's free. The balance in karma. I'm good. You can't make me feel bad because I screwed up. We all screw up. The power of self-forgiveness is it allows us to no longer have to hold it. When you have acknowledged what you've done, own the feelings, said, I'm sincerely sorry, made amends where possible, and done what you can to stop. So saying you're sorry and then taking another drink, that's not a full done. Self-forgiveness comes when you're done. And it doesn't mean you have to be perfect. So if you're late all the time and you go to therapy and you pay attention and you go from 80% late to 20% late, wonderful. You're not chronically late anymore. If you can somehow go to, drinking a lot and having one glass of wine every 6 months, you're good. I mean, I'm not telling anybody how to live, but you can let any grief towards yourself go. But the key pieces, and this is so key, when you've done these steps, you have every right to fully and completely forgive yourself. And we suggest that you literally say to yourself, I fully and completely forgive myself for doing X, Y, and Z. I am free. I fully and completely forgive myself for indifferent parenting. I fully and completely forgive myself for using too many drugs. I fully and completely forgive myself for X, Y, and Z. Only when you've done the appropriate steps, only. Because you do not have to be a prisoner of your worst behaviors for your whole life. It helps no one. No one is helped by that. No one. The last step in this process, I mean, it's a convoluted process. And I realized as I'm talking about this that I have slides that detail this process, and I'll forward them to Patrick, and he can make them available to anybody who wants them. I don't know why I didn't think of this before. Probably because I talk so much, I don't even think anymore. It's like, I'm not even sure. But I have our 12 steps to self-forgiveness, and that I will send those slides off to Patrick. The last piece in this, which I want to focus on too, and this is essential for the practice of forgiveness, is along with acknowledging the harm you did, you also need an accounting of some of the good you did. Because if you do not acknowledge your good, you get such a biased view of who you are. You're not just your worst behaviors. None of us are just our worst behaviors, and none of us want to be known throughout our lives as simply someone who was an alcoholic. None of us. That is such a limiting negative viewpoint. You are not your lowest. For me, it would be, I'd be much more comfortable with, I used to drink or abuse substances, but I don't now because I'm really vigilant. I would be very comfortable with that kind of present-centered assertion. But you want to acknowledge your good. And in order to get a full perspective of who you are and who you were, you need to also examine your wins, your successes, your good intentions. And I believe that is one of the key strengths of the 12-step programs, because they ask each other to help each other. So that simply by going through the process, you are sponsoring or helping others, you want to pay attention to your good. Because again, one of the deepest antidotes to shame is acknowledging your good. That yes, you may have screwed up, and you are also a human being who wasn't just your screw ups. That you did screwed up things, but you are not just a screw up. And you want that to be a constant understanding. Because the more you view yourself as a screw up and not as a complex human being who both failed and succeeded, the harder it is to move ahead. And what we're looking at for self-forgiveness is moving ahead, of not being caught in our past and not being limited by our past, not being defined by our failures. We're not defined by the fact that we screwed up. And we're not limited by the fact that we screwed up. One of the ways that this can take place is in the story we tell of our desire to free ourselves from whatever substance problems that we had. Was there are two ways to look at recovery. One of them, and there's many ways, but there are two distinct ways to look at how difficult recovery is. One of them is the clear research-based understanding that no one recovers from addiction easily. That the average person has multiple stops and starts and multiple relapses. That is across addictions, across problems. There's whole bodies of research on the number of attempts it takes for the average person to achieve the result. But here's the question. Do you refer to yourself as a failure because it took such effort and so many tries? Or do you look at the overarching goodness of wanting to succeed and how many times you were willing to pick yourself back up? And I want to strongly suggest you look at how many times you were willing to pick yourself back up. How often you crashed and burned, and how often you said, this is not the end. This is just the middle of a story. And ultimately, and this is where I can draw this to a close, except I'm going to do a guided meditation before I'm fully done. I always do a meditation practices. Ultimately, the workbook that we created, the Forgive for Good workbook, and all of my work on forgiveness is the purpose is to create a loving story about your own life. That's the takeaway of forgiveness. So the takeaway story of self-forgiveness is I screwed up. I didn't know better. I didn't know how to live life successfully. I made mistakes. I hurt people. I learned. I changed. I suffered for it. I made amends. Now I'm a different person. I've worked really hard for this. I stumbled, but it was worth the effort. I'm worth the effort. And you want the story to encompass the growth, the change, the drive for wholeness, not to focus on what you did wrong. That's a piece of the story, not the story. It's only a modest piece. And so ultimately, forgiveness is a change to a more loving story about you and your life and the past and where you're going. And it includes your failures, but it's not centered on them. They're not the key ingredient. The key ingredient is living a successful, helpful, useful life. You may have banged around a bit with addiction. You may have even gone to some weird corners of the earth, not smartly, but here you are. And you want to honor that. And that is the ultimate goal of forgiveness, is to give you a loving, positive story about your own life that you can move ahead with. That is the purpose of forgiveness, to take away either the victim story of how badly you were treated, which is one of the bad stories we have, or the I'm a terrible person story, which is the other stupid story that many of us have about our life. Either the victim, poor me, or I'm bad story, housing me. Both of those are complete dead ends. The useful story is, this is what it took for me to have a useful, successful life. Here's how I got here. But the goal was always a useful and successful life. I got detoured in victimhood. I got detoured in bad Fred, but that's not who I am. And that's what I just did, was forgiveness. I'm honest about my life. I'm honest about my path. That's not who I am. That's where I got stuck for a while. Now I'm back on track, or I'm getting myself on track. And that's the story you want to tell. And the biggest obstacle to that is the victim stories that so many of us keep ourselves from growing, because I'm a victim of this, I'm a victim of that, this didn't go right, somebody else screwed up. Those keep us stuck. Anyway, that's enough me yakking. Let me lead a guided meditation for a few moments on our forgiveness work. And then I have a couple minutes if you want to put some questions in the chat for me. And again, I would highly recommend, if you liked what I offered, you pick up that workbook. It's not expensive and it's really useful. This is the culmination of my 30 years of teaching forgiveness, is this workbook. So those of you out there, if you please be willing to close your eyes with me for a few moments and do a guided meditation practice. I teach a lot with guided imagery. So if everybody would stop where they are. Close your eyes for a moment. And allow yourself to quiet and relax. And allow your breathing to gentle and to slow. And you want to gentle as you inhale, softly and gently. And you want to gentle as you exhale, softly and gently. Inhale very, very, very softly. And exhale very, very, very gently. And then just for a moment, bring an image to your mind of someone you love. And when that image of love is clear to you, just see if you can feel in your body that affection. Like, just see if you can, like, feel it in your heart. And you want it to warm your heart. And then you want to very, very, very gently let go of that image. And you want to very, very gently maybe take a breath and have your eyes softly open again. And I want to explain what that was about. One of the reasons that people do not find forgiveness, either of themselves or others, is that they don't know what they're looking for. You will never find forgiveness with self-pity, and you will never find forgiveness with anger. The place we don't look for it is like in our hearts. So what you want is an ability to go into your own heart, which already knows how to forgive, and allow it to soften. You know, you have to do the things that make you worthy of it. So, you know, you make amends and you say you're sorry and you legitimately regret your behavior and you do some things that show that the world needs to welcome you back. And then all you need left to do is soften your own heart, you know, so you don't carry around negativity. But we're usually looking for it in anger or victimhood, and you can't find it there. And so I meet so many people who literally don't know where to look for their own healing. Anyway, I have a few minutes left. If anybody wants to, I don't know what the word is, put a question in the chat thing, I can look here. I don't know if I
So
can
Fred,
answer them.
Fred, if you like, I can. Do you want to look at them? I want to make just
I got it here.
a quick announcement. We're self-supporting through our own contributions, and any contribution that you make goes to our work that we do in bringing free resources to the recovery community. And there is a link in the chat if you'd like to make a contribution. Thank you.
I see some
Okay,
questions
so I'll
here.
just leave it to you, Fred. You'll just pick them from the chat. Is that
Yeah, I'm going to pull a few out.
okay? You got it.
So here's a really common question. How can you forgive when they keep doing it over and over again? I mean, that's you know, it's a good question. Um, you know, one of the problems with that question is nobody knows why you're still there. So sometimes we don't make the right decisions to get out of a relationship, to quit a job, or to change our behavior so arguments don't maintain themselves. So often with that question, the baseline question is, why are you still there? And people say, well, it's my brother. I have to stay. And I'll remind them, you don't have to stay. Like, the only people that you have to stay with are your underage children. Like, you have to take care of a 15-year-old. You don't have to take care of a 50-year-old. The second question, though, that comes out of this is, if you're in a situation which is not safe, forgiveness is not the problem. You have to make yourself safe. And you have to take actions to either get away, you know, call the police, say no, whatever you have to do. But safety trumps forgiveness in things which don't change, where maybe you've tried to make corrections and you forgive later, but make yourself safe now. Okay. Next one. How do I forgive a sexual perpetrator when they haven't admitted a wrong? I don't want to be held helpful there. It's not their responsibility to help us free ourselves. And they don't have to admit anything for us to forgive. We forgive because we want to. Often, people impaired enough to be sexual perpetrators are impaired enough to have no remorse, and impaired enough even to think they did nothing wrong. You would hate to ruin your life because they have so many human deficits. So the real question is, how do I let go of my victimhood of the past when not just do they show their character problems by doing what they did, but they show their character problems by not owning it. And what that gives you is something else to forgive, but none of that is up to them. Like, you don't have to stay prisoner of somebody else's failures, including their failure to acknowledge what they've done wrong. Here's the key question. Like, we can forgive dead people. If we couldn't forgive dead people, the human race would be in a really crappy way. So if you can forgive dead people who can't do anything, you can forgive living people who won't. Because the forgiveness does not belong to them, it belongs to you. Please share your thoughts on forgiveness for someone who experienced a violent crime in the family for which there was no resolution. Sometimes there is no resolution. What does that even mean? No one owning the truth. For us to forgive, we have to own the truth. We can't convince anybody else of our truth or the truth. We can only own ours. If you come from a family that's in denial or is incapable of helping each other, that's not enough for us to remain stuck. It may make it much harder to communicate within our family, but it doesn't have to cloud our heart. And that is the key. I mean, think about that word mercy. Imagine bringing that mercy to an incompetent family that can't acknowledge or own or deal successfully with certain kinds of wounding. The mercy exists in your heart. It doesn't exist out in the world. It's in your heart. I made an amends in my recovery, and it felt thorough, but the response felt very harsh. Should I respond further? We don't control how people respond to us. And we don't control the intensity of the bad feeling they had. We just make our amends. Now, if you make an amends and you do the best you can with that amends, you're off the hook. If they respond harshly, you can decide either one, wow, this is indication that maybe they're not the right person for me. Or two, maybe it invites another conversation, which is, hey, I said I'm sorry. You were harsher than I thought. Is there anything we can talk about it? But you don't have to make such harsh judgments. And they don't owe you perfection, and you don't owe them perfection. You're human beings trying to figure this crap out. Someone tried to cheat me. That hurts. How do I apologize to them? Is I am scared of being close to them, of being closed to them. Again, we apologize or we accept an apology for the quality of our heart. If you're afraid of getting too close to somebody, that's good information. So you can apologize and still have boundaries. You can say, hey, mea culpa, but I want to be best friends. Or mea culpa, don't do it again. Or mea culpa, I won't do it again. The forgiveness is an entree to a more open-hearted experience. It's not necessarily the end entirely of the story, but it allows you to have a kinder story. How do I forgive myself when I don't have the strength to stop my compulsions? This is such a tough question, and there's no easy answer to that. Some people simply don't exercise enough willpower, and that's a tough one. Some people have neurological things that make it really hard to stop. Some people are just wired that way. What I would suggest is creating a realistic story in your head so you tell the truth, which is, I am really, really deeply held by my addictive behavior. And I don't know if I'll be able to stop it. Therefore, anybody in relationship with me, buyer beware. That's probably the safest that you can be. Buyer beware. But at least you're honest. And if they agree to buy what you're selling, then they're agreeing to who you are. For you, it's like, hey, if I've done everything I can, I don't know what to say. I have found, though, that for many people, the pain of doing without that dopamine thing is something that they don't want to risk. And, that's part of it can be a choice. Part of it can be brain chemistry. I wouldn't give up working on the choice aspect. Okay. One or two more questions. How do you forgive someone who has hurt not me, but the people I love? Well, there's two parts to that. One is showing active care and support for the people you love. And that doesn't always mean making an enemy out of the person that hurt them. Like, you have to understand there's a difference between loving the people you love and having an enemy. You can love the people you love without having an enemy. It's not necessary to have an enemy. You can simply love the people you love and comfort them in their pain without necessarily holding on to what you think hurt them and caused their pain. You can offer a lot of love and care. Secondly, the person that hurt them, there has to be some analysis of whether that hurt was a one-off or characterologic. If somebody made a mistake and that mistake hurt your people you care for, that's more easily forgivable than if they're a marauding danger. If they made a mistake, that's part of being human, and we need to accept people's humanity so you can open your heart back up. If they're dangerous or interpersonally toxic, then you can say, both inside yourself and to your family, I don't think it's best to have much relationship with them. But having an enemy and hating people will probably very rarely do your family much good. You caring for your family members will do your family a lot of good. Anyway, my time is up. I have to go and teach something on Stanford's campus. I thank you very much for your attention. I'm trying to find as many places as possible to speak to spread this workbook. So the fact that 300 of you showed up to listen to me, I'm very, very, very grateful. And if you buy the workbook and it's helpful to you, please tell other people, because I think it's a useful thing. But again, I thank you all for your time and your attention. I don't take that for granted.
Thank you
Thank
so
you so much, Fred. Thank you so much.
Excellent.
much.
What a lesson.
Thank
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you. Thank you for talking so much.
This is important work. I don't mean I'm the opposite of trivializing this. Addictions are a real obstacle to personal well-being, and I know that our inability to forgive ourselves and others makes the work harder. Thank you, Patrick. I'll send you the slides.
Oh, that's great.
as I
Yes,
get off.
yes, yes. That's great, Fred. Thank you so much. All the best today.
Thanks,
Take
it
care,
was great.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
God bless you.